organization from its acronym, because I know you have one in Africa, an international aspect as well. I was sitting here asking myself, okay, what have you researched so specifically that you can have a conversation about with regard to peace? And when you are spending most of your life in conflict environments, it's really difficult to try and see or to try and diagnose at which point you arrive at what you ultimately want to achieve, which is idealistically a peaceful utopic environment. So you are here in South Africa and we're talking about peace and justice, and I was hoping that, I'm not certain if that was something that has been raised prior, but it is a very significant period. And so my topic has been on South Africa's peace justice issues today, particularly facing women and young people. And the first thing that I noticed from the conversations that have happened today, and mine, I think I'll share anecdotes, but also go into a bit into some kind of analysis that has been made, is the issue around what was raised just now with the penultimate speaker around the TRC and the success that it was in South Africa. I just want to start at that point, but and going back, of course, to make an understanding of why it is an absolutely incoherent, it is an incorrect diagnosis to suggest that the TRC was a success in South Africa. And I will give you brief reasons for doing so.
Can you speak closer to the mic?
Yes, certainly. Sorry.
Because we are not able to.
Okay. Okay. So for me, I think the point of what the Honorable Professor from Nigeria says is, what is the truth? And if we want to have an open conversation about peace and justice, let's be honest with ourselves. And this is where the issue of the TRC, and if we have to make an analysis, it was one, politically expedient, but secondly, outside of its political expedience, it was dishonest from its inception to its report, in terms of the fact that it was providing amnesty. So it was a collusion with a perpetrator and a victim. And in South African society, if we have to make that analysis, the intention of it should have been to create a socially cohesive society, advancing a developmental state, and what transpired in the converse was that we have a more socially divided society, moving away from what has earlier been raised from the economic model, which should have been one that moved away from welfare dependency, of which we came from in the South African project, towards a developmental and less dependent state, and now being forced economically to move towards a pseudo welfare state all over again. So I don't believe that in any way, mean or form, the TRC did anything to assist. And what then becomes of the initiatives of peace and justice? How then do we qualify the interventions that we may have seemed to be providing remedy, and in truth being able to say, oh, hold on, as a peace practitioner, as a peace educator, as a peace researcher, I failed in making that analysis done. And I want to go to the point of why was that so? The leadership of the political space in South Africa, one particularly being a political party that was, I would say, to a large degree involved, but not directly, as denied by its leader, in KZN where I grew up, that of the Inkatha Freedom Party. And if you have to understand the dynamics post and pre 94, 92, 90s, moving closer towards the period of Sharpeville, there was massive uprising, which was then what was referred to as a spillover from the military Mkhonto Wesizwe kind of trajectory and the UDF in the 80s, preceded by the 70s youth uprising. And this brings it back to the topic. What was the role, or what is the conflict in terms of the psychology of young people and women in South Africa? So it's not necessarily dismissing the fact that it could be hereditary and a politically based gene that has been created, which then translates into a natural conflictual environment. But what then transpired was young people were killed and workers were killed during the conflicts at the time in Sharpeville, Mlazi, etc. And what he then says is, I have never personally ordered a killing. I have never personally been involved. But I do not support the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. However, I will attend and provide a evidence or a statement that will exonerate me. Now that is the political expediency that he, on his own, defaces in the face of what is coming from the initial proposal on the TRC, and uses it to prove that there is no shred of evidence. Prove to me that I have not, that I have pulled the trigger, or prove to me that I have done something. And the second issue is the issue of amnesty, and I don't want to delve too much, it was not my intention. I think the reality in terms of the TRC and what is being raised, it stirs a lot of emotion in the minds and hearts of South Africans. One, because it is true that you cannot sit at the table with the perpetrator and expect that remorse to not have a price tag on it. And if it has the price tag of a perpetrator's freedom, then you have then exonerated yourself and a perpetrator through a dishonest means system. And I think that that is in truth what the TRC was about in South Africa. The major synopsis, and I want to get to the struggle history very briefly because I think I touched on it a bit, is the fact that the history of South African struggle gives us a glimpse into what then do we analyze as a conflictual. South Africa is a nation at war. It may not be that that war is fought on the street every day, but it is fought in homes every day. It is fought by criminals and those who are protecting private property. It is fought by individuals who are actively involved in criminal activity. So it may not be an overt war or conflict that South Africa is facing, but it is one, if it is diagnosed thoroughly, takes more lives and has more consequential damage than one of conflict. Because one has to then ask fundamental questions, like what is being said about globalization and sensationalism with social media, etc. Has it then diluted or warped a simple understanding of morality? One of the things that we question, and let's go back to the 70s and the build-up in the 60s and the 50s, the banning period of the political parties, and thereafter building towards the 60s and the 70s. It's quite clear that the nature of the society in terms of its majority, particularly special reference being made to its young people, was that it was a conflictual society by nature. Young people had to constantly find themselves at the behest of how do we fix a society. And there was establishment, there was organization in terms of political establishment, civil society, as well as state, which was being obviously in conflict at that time. It's a naturally conflictual society. The TRC was unable, it may have put a stop on immediate black on white and white on black violence, but did it manage to contain black on black violence? And those are the realities when we want to raise fundamental questions and comments about apartheid. The first question is, let's leave it in the past. The reality is that that has become what we have impregnated into every generation as a recycled perpetuation of violence in South African conflicts. And yes, it is indeed a major issue that needs to be addressed in terms of the economy. The issue of xenophobia in South Africa, I can't say whether that is the diagnosis correctly of, and this is what Moses also speaks about when he says, yes, we're a society which is Ubuntu, and we open our homes and we say to our enemy, or whoever it is, I wouldn't say enemy, I would rather say to whomever we can, and offer them a seat at the table. But what then happens if that seat at the table has not been able to feed the mouths that have been sitting on that table before the guest arrives? So it's just for the purposes of saying, here we have a guest, now let us take whatever we have and provide for the guest. It's highly simplified but in terms of its analysis, we've experienced, it's not the first xenophobic outbreak we've had in South Africa. Go back to 2003, 2007, there were camps that were built to house foreign nationals in open spaces. And we failed to go back and make reflection on the fact that we failed not in harmonizing the African people, but we failed in terms of creating an economy that would be able to sustain. Now this is where I think the history of South Africa, Kudesa, was also a failed process. It was just let's just shove the banana in the face of the monkey and let's just get over it. So that's really what Kudesa was. It was just to do a handshake. The falsities around democracy can't be celebrated because the falsities of democracy led to what has now created the antagonisms in our society, which have resulted and perpetuated further rift, division, inequality, unemployment, poverty, crime, and whatever other commercial and crimes that succeed become part of our society. So I believe that mapping the path forward and looking at the issues of peace and justice and what has been the adulations really around being able to create the society. And we can't be then seduced by landscapes to assume that South Africa is beautiful. It might be beautiful from the outlook, but what really is transpiring within its day-to-day harmony in a family, and we see this with gender-based violence, with the drug trafficking and the human trafficking, sex trafficking in South Africa is phenomenal. And it is something that when we ask ourselves pertinent questions about the involvement, we need to then make the kind of characterizations, because these are the things that affect young people and women. And these are the attitudes of sex trafficking and human trafficking in particular, drugs and those related crimes that then separate the statistics in terms of increasing murder rates. Is it different to suggest that because the percentage of men being murdered are higher than women, and despite the fact that we have a bigger population or demographic of women, the reality is the involvement in gangsterism, crime, and that kind of thing, which I don't believe that the translation of how we view conflict needs to be straddled in terms of a one violence. And more particularly, I think the concern that emanates is corruption, fraud, and political corruption has almost become consciously confirmed in society, that there's no illegality attached to it. So the word corruption is untimely placed, because for a political leadership in South Africa, it is seen as, it's my entitlement. So what if somebody has done whatever they've done and we've breached protocol, etc.? And how then does that contribute towards a conflictual society? Because there's lack of accountability. And it is very easy to create a lawless society from those kinds of underpinnings in a society. And these are the challenges I think that we are facing, trying to create, or hoping to create, the impression that patriarchy, its dispositions, and its importations of ideas from colonialization and neoliberalism, if you want to call it that, neo-colonialist mentalities, ours was a colonization of a special type. Does that then qualify that women might be better leaders by default simply because men are, by their societal and survey characterization, have become so arrogant and so consumed to the extent that rape, murder, and leadership are for the appetite that is insatiable of patriarchy and other male mentality. So what we're faced with, I think, is a diagnosis around the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325, and looking then at what has been, and this is a reflection quickly on the point of the 60s, the 70s, the 50s, the banning of the ANC, the banning of the Communist Party, the banning of all other political structures, moving into then a war environment, or if you want to refer to it, or a retaliation to the armed struggle. And was it then when Nelson Mandela approached Dube, and at that point there was a peace pact, obviously, and I'm just pointing at you, sir, because your love for Gandhi, is that there was then a resistance to say, but here we are trying to create a Puma, Dube, and I can't think of it, pact, Dadu pact. And you want to go on the offensive. So we need to understand the internal interfaces of a liberation movement and its contribution towards averting division or trying to bring around prosperity to the nation, and at the same time bring provocateurs of conflict. And if that is what the majority in a society is engaging with, and that is what we are voting for, it's not difficult to misunderstand that conflict may not be emanating from places that we don't know, but it's actually just right where it can be fixed. And so the UN resolution, I think, is necessary and relevant. It covers 4 pillars on participation, protection, prevention, relief, and recovery. For me, I think the most significant thing that comes out is, and this is where the resolution then would have to make a factual and test-driven finding around sexual gender-based violence that emanates from war practices like we've experienced in the DRC and in Zimbabwe, etc. And I think from that, and one has to take into consideration the recent events, because my topic brings us to women and children in South Africa in terms of conflict, it would be very easy to identify that women in South Africa lived in perpetual fear, and there is no honesty about the fact that we are indeed a nation at war. Because here are the recent events of women who have been missing, raped, murdered, and found a few weeks later, highly mutilated. And the response that we have is one that says, let us put them in jail, and what then becomes of them? Are we not trying to do what we did with the TRC, clean the slate and make it go away? How do we hold accountable the perpetrators? And I think that that's where the gap between the researcher, the educator, and the implementation becomes relevant. Because it really rests in the hands of a restorative justice. And that's bringing the link towards an honest peace, an honest process, as opposed to disposing it. The other issue I think in South Africa that we struggle with is around civil society and exceptional weakness. During the period of the UDF, and whoever poses to the fact that South Africa has a strong civil society is also not being peaceful and honest. Because during the time in the period of the UDF, and this is where a lot of South Africa's responsibility was placed and was left to hold itself responsible for in that period and era. South Africans went into an extreme laziness to the point where it was almost comatic. The society felt that they could not bear the responsibility of needing to go back into another interactive, physically interactive battle, protesting. And what has happened is that indirectly, that is exactly where South Africa is currently. It's at conflict with itself, with its state, with its people, with its wives, with its children, with its leaders. It's at a permanent conflict. So I think that dissolution and weakness of civil society, post-conflict planning processes, and the disproportionate impact of conflict on women are some of the misnomers in what needs to be addressed in respect of the role that women play. Of course, the peace process would not be in any way leveraging any kind of strength without women in it at the decision-making points, etc. But the other question that we must ask ourselves is the efficiency and effectiveness of women that we've had increasing in our cabinets, in our parliamentary systems, where you have an increase of rape and gender-based violence, and you expect men to take responsibility for their actions, when women and their quantifiable representation have done nothing to decrease those or to make meaningful contribution towards policy and legislation. So I think we're stuck in a system where we try to tick all the boxes that are expected in terms of what researchers suggest, in terms of what the United Nations suggest, in terms of what the G7 suggests, IMF, ILO, and the UN desk on women, etc. The reality is there's absolutely no point of convergence of conflict and peaceful solution to conflict. And this, I think, rests a lot in terms of what has transpired in South Africa with women and young people. I think the one thing that we must not forget is that in as much as South Africa is a highly political society, or it has been, its level of political unconsciousness, if I can use that word very deliberately, is that it's tired from having to try and journey through this experience. But it does not take away the fact that it confirms what Prince Buthelezi had said about his involvement or his non-involvement in giving an instruction to pull a trigger, is the fact that political conferences and parties are based on tribal lines in South Africa. And what then this creates is that there is another conflict that exists amongst each other, which may even be subjective to a conflict between a sister country. And I think that those are the things that I wanted to share in terms of the time and the issues, and whether then it would be that we are moving from, and there was a call on a TRC for rape and gender-based violence and sexual assault, and the question then arose, but how do you expect a rapist to look into the eye of a victim? And that remorse is enough to take away the action or the crime.
She's waiting for half an hour.
The reality of it is that I think for as long as we do not attend to the inequalities that we face economically, we will not give our people in South Africa, the women and children who have been actively involved in struggle, who've actively been involved in bringing change, bringing democracy from the street, who may not have been involved in settlement discussions in CODESA, but who are at the least receiving end of the benefits of what that democracy that they had to actively engage on would mean for creating a future of self-dependency for themselves. Thank you very much.